Most people walk into an argument with the wrong objective. They walk in wanting victory. They want to dominate, to overpower, to force the other person into surrender. They want the final word. They want the moment when the other person says, "Fine, you're right." But that moment rarely comes. And even when it does, it often means nothing. Because winning an argument is not about defeating a person. It is about influencing a mind. The first principle is simple. The moment you make someone feel stupid, you have already lost. Human beings will defend their identity long after they stop defending their logic. They will abandon facts, ignore evidence, and construct entire worlds of justification if it protects their sense of self. That means every argument is happening on two levels. There is the surface level, where people discuss ideas, facts, and opinions. Then there is the deeper level, where people are protecting pride, status, certainty, and belonging. Most people only see the surface. The person who understands both levels controls the outcome. When you enter an argument, slow down. The fastest person is usually the weakest person. Emotional urgency creates mistakes. It causes people to interrupt, exaggerate, and react. The calmest person in the room often becomes the most persuasive person in the room. Why? Because calm communicates confidence. When you appear unshaken, people assume you possess information they do not. Your composure becomes evidence. Listen longer than others expect. This sounds passive, but it is one of the most aggressive advantages you can have. While the other person is talking, do not prepare your next attack. Study them. Learn what they care about. Listen for the values hidden beneath their words. Every strong argument is built on understanding the other person's motivations better than they understand them themselves. People think persuasion is about speaking. It is not. Persuasion begins with observation. Ask questions. Questions are more powerful than statements because questions force participation. A statement creates resistance. A question creates thought. Instead of saying, "You are wrong," ask, "What evidence would change your mind?" Instead of saying, "That doesn't make sense," ask, "How did you arrive at that conclusion?" Questions move the burden of explanation onto the other person. Questions reveal weaknesses without direct confrontation. Questions allow people to discover contradictions on their own. And remember this, people trust conclusions they reach themselves far more than conclusions handed to them by someone else. Another mistake people make is overwhelming others with information. They believe that if one fact is good, 50 facts must be better. But human beings are not logic machines. More information does not automatically create more persuasion. In many cases, it creates confusion and resistance. The most effective communicators focus on one powerful point at a time. They guide attention instead of scattering it. Clarity beats complexity. A simple truth delivered with confidence is often more persuasive than a complicated truth delivered with hesitation. You must also understand the role of emotion. Many people pretend arguments are purely rational. They are not. Every major decision a person makes is influenced by emotion first and justified by logic afterward. If you ignore emotion, you ignore reality. This does not mean manipulating people. It means recognizing that beliefs are connected to experiences, fears, hopes, and identities. If you want to change a belief, you must address the emotional foundation beneath it. Find common ground before introducing disagreement. This is one of the oldest principles of influence because it works. People are more willing to travel with you when they know you are standing on the same side of the road. Start with agreement, establish shared values, create connection, then introduce your perspective. Agreement lowers defenses. Connection opens doors. Never argue against the strongest version of your own imagination. Argue against the strongest version of their actual position. Too many people create a weak caricature of the opposing view and then celebrate defeating it. That is not persuasion. That is performance. Real influence requires intellectual honesty. Show people that you understand their perspective accurately. When they feel understood, they become more willing to understand you. There is another secret that separates powerful communicators from everyone else. They do not need to win every point. They willingly concede small points when those points are true. This shocks people. Most arguers defend every inch of territory. Powerful communicators do the opposite. They acknowledge reality, they admit uncertainty, they recognize valid objections, and by doing so, they gain credibility. Credibility is the currency of persuasion. Every time you exaggerate, you spend credibility. Every time you distort, you spend credibility. Every time you refuse to acknowledge an obvious truth, you spend credibility. Eventually, you run out. The strongest position is not perfection. The strongest position is honesty. You should also learn the difference between an argument and a performance. Some people are not seeking understanding. They are seeking attention. They are not interested in discovering what is true. They are interested in looking superior. These conversations are traps. The goal is not to persuade you. The goal is to provoke you. In these situations, the greatest victory is often refusing to play the game. Not every argument deserves your energy. Not every challenge deserves your response. Not every critic deserves your attention. The ability to walk away is power. And perhaps the most important lesson of all is this. Winning an argument is not measured by what happens during the conversation. It is measured by what happens afterward. Real persuasion is often invisible. A person may reject your ideas today and reconsider them tomorrow. They may resist in public and reflect in private. Seeds grow underground long before they appear above the surface. Do not judge success by immediate applause. Judge success by lasting impact. The people who consistently influence others understand something that most people never learn. Human beings do not want to be conquered. They want to be understood. They want dignity. They want respect. They want the freedom to change their minds without humiliation. Give people those things, and your influence increases dramatically. So if you truly want to win any argument, stop focusing on victory. Focus on understanding. Focus on clarity. Focus on composure. Focus on credibility. Focus on connection. The person who controls their emotions, asks better questions, listens more carefully, and respects the humanity of the person across from them possesses an advantage that no amount of shouting can overcome, because the ultimate goal is not to defeat another human being. The ultimate goal is to guide a conversation toward truth. And when truth becomes the objective instead of ego, arguments stop being battles. They become opportunities. That is where real influence begins. Most people believe arguments are won through stronger words. They think the person with the quickest response, the loudest voice, or the sharpest comeback gains the advantage. But if you study the most influential communicators in history, you discover something surprising. Their greatest weapon was not speaking. It was control of attention, control of emotion, control of timing, control of themselves. The average person reacts. The influential person responds. That difference changes everything. When someone attacks your position, your natural instinct is to defend it immediately. Your heart rate increases. Your mind races. You search for ammunition. You prepare a counterattack. But this reaction places you inside a frame created by the other person. You are no longer leading the conversation. You are following it. The strongest communicators refuse to surrender control of the frame. Imagine two people standing in a storm. One tries to fight every gust of wind. The other adjusts their position and remains balanced. Which one survives longer? The same principle applies to arguments. Resistance consumes energy. Adaptability creates strength. When someone challenges you, pause. Silence is uncomfortable for most people. That is why it is powerful. A pause communicates confidence. It signals that you are considering rather than reacting. It allows you to think while the other person wonders what comes next. Many arguments are won in the space between words. Learn to become comfortable in that space. There is another principle that few people understand. Facts are important, but facts alone rarely change minds. Human beings filter information through beliefs they already possess. Two people can observe the same event and reach completely different conclusions. Not because they saw different facts, but because they interpreted those facts through different lenses. If you want to influence someone, identify the lens before you address the evidence. Ask yourself what experiences shaped their viewpoint. Ask yourself what fears support their conclusions. Ask yourself what needs are being fulfilled by their beliefs. Because when you understand the lens, you understand the person. And when you understand the person, persuasion becomes possible. One of the most effective techniques in any disagreement is to accurately summarize the other person's position before presenting your own. Do it so well that they say, "Yes, that's exactly what I mean." This accomplishes several things simultaneously. First, it lowers resistance. Second, it builds trust. Third, it demonstrates intelligence. Fourth, it prevents misunderstandings. Most arguments continue for hours because neither side truly understands what the other side is saying. They are fighting shadows instead of realities. They are responding to assumptions instead of actual positions. Clarity dissolves conflict. The moment people feel understood, something remarkable happens. Their defenses begin to weaken. They become less interested in protecting themselves and more interested in exploring ideas. They stop preparing their next attack and start listening. That is the doorway through which influence enters. Another mistake people make is confusing confidence with certainty. Confidence says, "I believe this strongly." Certainty says, "I cannot possibly be wrong." The first position creates credibility. The second position creates vulnerability. The moment you believe you know everything, you stop learning. The moment you stop learning, your arguments become weaker. Great communicators remain curious. They ask questions even when they disagree. They search for information even when they feel convinced. Curiosity is a hidden source of power. A curious person gathers information. An arrogant person gathers enemies. When you enter a disagreement, assume there is something you do not yet know. This mindset keeps your thinking flexible. It prevents blind spots. It allows you to adapt as new information appears. The strongest debater is not the one who never changes their mind. The strongest debater is the one who changes their mind when evidence requires it. That is intellectual strength. There is also tremendous power in simplicity. Complex arguments often sound impressive, but simplicity wins understanding. Imagine explaining your position to a child. Could you do it clearly? Could you communicate the core idea without hiding behind complicated language? If not, there is a good chance you do not understand it as well as you think. Complexity can hide weakness. Simplicity reveals strength. When your message is simple, people remember it. When people remember it, they repeat it. When they repeat it, your influence spreads. Another overlooked principle is emotional consistency. Many people make excellent points and then destroy their own credibility through emotional instability. They become defensive, they become sarcastic, they become hostile. Suddenly, the discussion is no longer about ideas. It is about behavior. People evaluate your message through the lens of your conduct. If your behavior appears irrational, your argument appears weaker. If your behavior appears controlled, your argument appears stronger. Whether that judgment is fair or not does not matter. It happens. That is why self-mastery is essential. Before you attempt to influence another mind, learn to govern your own. You cannot control someone else's emotions. You can control your response to them, and that response often determines the outcome. One of the most effective ways to maintain composure is to detach your identity from your opinions. This sounds simple, but it is transformative. Most people become emotionally attached to what they believe. As a result, disagreement feels personal. A challenge to an idea feels like a challenge to the self. But ideas are tools. They are not identities. When you separate yourself from your opinions, you gain freedom. You can evaluate evidence objectively. You can revise conclusions without feeling defeated. You can engage in disagreement without experiencing it as a threat. This mindset dramatically increases your persuasive ability because people sense the difference. They recognize when someone is exploring truth rather than defending ego, and truth is attractive. Ego is exhausting. You should also pay attention to language patterns. Words shape perception. The difference between two sentences can completely alter how a message is received. Consider the difference between saying, "You're wrong," and saying, "I see it differently." One creates resistance, the other creates discussion. The difference between those statements is not intelligence, it is strategy. The goal is not merely to express yourself, the goal is to be heard. Communication that fails to influence is incomplete. This does not mean becoming dishonest. It means becoming effective. The most influential communicators understand that delivery affects impact. They choose words carefully. They eliminate unnecessary conflict. They guide conversations instead of igniting battles. And perhaps one of the greatest skills you can develop is recognizing when someone is emotionally committed to a position beyond the reach of logic. Not every disagreement can be resolved through evidence. Not every conversation is ready for change. Sometimes a person's belief is connected to years of identity, relationships, experiences, and emotions. Attempting to force immediate transformation usually produces stronger resistance. Patience becomes essential. Plant ideas, ask questions, provide perspective, then allow time to do its work. Pressure often hardens beliefs. Reformation often softens them. The person who understands timing possesses an enormous advantage because persuasion is not simply about what you say. It is about when you say it. And sometimes the most powerful moment in an argument is not the point you make. It is the thought you leave behind, the thought that returns later, the thought that grows quietly, the thought that refuses to disappear. That is the mark of true influence, not immediate compliance, not temporary surrender, but lasting reflection. The objective is not to win a moment. The objective is to shape a future decision. And the people who master this distinction operate at a completely different level. They understand that arguments are not contests of force. They are exercises in understanding human nature. The better you understand human nature, the more influence you possess. The more influence you possess, the less you need aggression. And the less you need aggression, the more powerful your presence becomes. Because true strength does not announce itself. It demonstrates itself quickly, consistently, relentlessly. And that is where the next level of persuasion begins.